Hello everyone, this is Dr. Navya Shetty, Professor and Head, Department of Public Health Dentistry, Sri Rajiv Gandhi College of Dental Sciences and Hospital, Bangalore. Disposal of wastes is now largely the domain of sanitarians and public health engineers. However, health professionals need to have a basic knowledge of the subject since improper disposal of wastes constitute a health hazard. Further, the health professional may be called upon to give advice in some special situations such as camp sanitation or coping with waste disposal problems when there is a disruption or breakdown of community health services in natural disasters. So in this session, we would be discussing about the solid waste disposal. At the end of this session, the learner will be able to understand the importance of solid waste disposal, will be able to list out the hazards of solid waste accumulation, will be able to enumerate the sources of refuse, and finally mention and discuss the types of solid waste disposal. Now let's look at solid wastes. What are solid wastes? Solid wastes include garbage like food wastes, paper, plastic, wood, metal, throwaway containers, sewage treatment residue like sludge, dead animals, etc., and discarded material. Solid waste, if allowed to accumulate, is a health hazard. Why? It decomposes and favors fly breeding. It may attract rodents. There is a possibility of water and soil pollution. The heaps of refuse present here is an unsightly appearance, and it may be a nuisance because of bad odor. So I repeat, what are the health hazards due to solid waste accumulation? Firstly, it decomposes and favors fly breeding. It may attract rodents. There is a possibility of water and soil pollution. Heaps of refuse over here may present an unsightly appearance and nuisance from bad odor. The pathogens which may be present in the solid waste may be conveyed back to man's food through flies and dust. So these were the health hazards due to solid waste accumulation. Moving on to the sources of refuse. So what are the sources of refuse? We have street refuse. So what is street refuse? It may consist of leaves, straw, paper, animal droppings, and litter of all kinds. Now what is market refuse? Refuse that is collected from markets is called market refuse. It may contain a large proportion of putrid vegetable and animal matter. Refuse that is collected from stables is called as stable litter, which contains mainly animal droppings. Next, moving on to domestic refuse. This may consist of remains of food, garbage, etc. Industrial refuse comes from the industries. So what are the sources of refuse? To summarize, we have street refuse, market refuse, stable litter, domestic refuse, and finally industrial refuse. The first consideration should be given to the proper storage of refuse while awaiting collection. The principal methods of waste disposal are as follows. Firstly, we have dumping, next controlled tipping or sanitary landfill, and under this we have trench method, ramp method, and area method. Next we have incineration, composting, manure pits, and burial. So to repeat, what are the methods of disposal? we have dumping, controlled tipping or sanitary landfill, which is further divided into trench method, ramp method and area method, incineration, composting, manure pits and burial. So let's discuss each method of waste disposal in detail. So firstly we have dumping over here. So what is dumping? Refuse is dumped, as you can see here, in low-lying areas as partly as a method of reclamation of land and is an easy method of disposal of dry refuse. As a result of bacterial action, refuse decreases considerably in volume and is converted gradually into humus. So what is dumping? I repeat, as you can see in this picture, refuse is dumped in low-lying areas as partly as a method of reclamation of land and is an easy method of disposal of dry refuse. So dumping is an easy method of disposal of dry refuse. So what happens when you dump here? As a result of bacterial action, refuse decreases considerably in volume and is converted gradually into humus. The drawbacks of open dumping are as follows. The refuse is exposed to flies and rodents, right? So dumping has its disadvantages. So what are the disadvantages? The refuse is exposed to flies and rodents. It may be a source of nuisance from the bad smell and unsightly appearance, and the loose refuse may be dispersed by the action of the wind. Okay, so there are disadvantages of dumping as well. So what were the disadvantages? The refuse is exposed to flies and rodents. It may be a source of nuisance from the smell and unsightly appearance, and the loose refuse may be dispersed by the action of the wind. Okay, so this was about dumping. Next we move on to controlled tipping, or it is otherwise known as sanitary landfill. So what is this? This is the most satisfactory method of refuse disposal where suitable land is available. So where there is a suitable land available, what is the method of waste disposal which is suitable? It's controlled tipping or sanitary landfill. It differs from ordinary dumping. How does it differ from ordinary dumping? Here the material is placed in a trench or prepared area, adequately compacted and covered with earth at the end of the working day. Okay, so here what is the difference between controlled tipping and dumping? The material is placed in a prepared area, adequately compacted and covered with earth at the end of the working day. Whereas there it was open dumping, but here you're covering it with earth at the end of the working day. So that was about controlled tipping or sanitary landfill. So as we discussed earlier, controlled tipping or sanitary landfill is further divided into trench method, ramp method and area method. So let's discuss about each method. Where is it used? So the first one is the trench method under the controlled tipping. So what is trench method and where is it used? So trench method is practiced where the level ground is available. I repeat, trench method is practiced where level ground is available. The refuse is compacted and covered with excavated earth. So that we already discussed in controlled tipping, that we cover it with excavated earth. So where is trench method used? This is done where level ground is available. Moving on to the ramp method. Now where is this suited? This is well suited where the terrain is moderately sloping. So ramp method is suited or practiced where the terrain is moderately sloping. So finally under controlled tipping we have the area method. So where is this used? This is used for filling land depressions, disused quarries and clay pits. So this is used to fill depressions, disused quarries and clay pits. So where all the clay pits or depressions are available, they are used for filling it. Okay, so we discussed about trench method, ramp method and area method. Continuing with the area method, what do we do in area method? The refuse is deposited, packed and consolidated in uniform layers up to 2 to 2.5 meters deep. Okay, so the refuse is packed in layers and each layer is sealed on its exposed surface with a mud cover at least 30 centimeters thick. So when you are filling it up uniformly, each layer is again sealed on its exposed surface with a mud cover. So what happens after this? There is chemical, bacteriological and physical changes taking place. So what are the three changes which takes place here? There is chemical, bacteriological and physical changes that occur in buried refuse. And what happens to the temperature? It increases to 60 degrees Celsius within 7 days, within a week, and all the pathogens are killed, which increases the decomposition process, and it takes 2 to 3 weeks to cool down. Okay, so once layers of refuse have been deposited and packed, and after each layer is being sealed on its exposed surface with mud, what happens? What are the changes taking place in the buried refuse? It is chemical, bacterial and physical changes that occur. And what happens to the temperature? It increases to 60 degrees Celsius within a week and it kills all the pathogens. So automatically the decomposition process speeds up. Then it takes 2 to 3 weeks to cool down. But normally it takes 4 to 6 months for complete decomposition of organic matter to take place. Okay, so I repeat, in area method, what happens? You're depositing the refuse in uniform layers and each layer is sealed on its exposed surface with a mud cover at least 30 centimeters thick. Okay, so finally with all these area method, ramp method and trench method in controlled tipping or sanitary landfill, what happens? There is chemical, bacteriological and physical changes that takes place in the buried refuse. Temperature increases to 60 degrees Celsius within 1 week and all the pathogens get killed. The decomposition process hastens up and it takes 2 to 3 weeks to cool down. For complete decomposition of organic matter to take place, how long does it take? Normally it takes 4 to 6 months. The bulldozer may be used for trimming and spreading the top soil. So this was about controlled tipping or sanitary landfill, and we discussed about the area method, trench method and the ramp method. Next we move on to incineration. Okay, next we move on to incineration. So what is incineration? Here the refuse can be disposed hygienically by burning or incineration. So incineration means burning. So refuse can be disposed by burning. And where is this practiced? This is done where suitable land is not available. Okay, where suitable land is not available. And this is the best method for hospital waste management. So for your Viva, when they ask you, what is the best method of hospital waste management in hospitals? You need to answer it as incineration. Okay, so this is the best method for hospital waste management. Okay, I hope you understood. This is the best method for hospital waste management. And what is it? Incineration. Very important Viva question. Next we move on to composting. So what is composting? It is a method of combined disposal of refuse and not night soil or sludge. So here what are you disposing? It's a combined disposal of refuse and night soil or sludge. So it is a process of nature by which organic matter breaks down under bacterial action, resulting in the formation of relatively stable humus-like material called compost, which is used as manure for the soil. So composting method is very useful. Why? Because the compost which is formed can be used as manure for the soil. So it is a combined disposal of refuse and night soil. Okay, two things. It's a combined disposal of refuse and night soil. And what happens? It is a process of nature by which organic matter breaks down under bacterial action, resulting in humus-like material called compost. And compost is used as manure for the soil. Okay, so what are the byproducts formed during this process? The byproducts formed are carbon dioxide, water and heat. So the heat produced during composting over a period of several days destroys eggs, larvae of flies, pathogenic agents, etc. Okay, so pathogenic agents are destroyed because of the heat produced during the composting. So finally, because of composting, the end product what we got is compost, and compost is a good soil builder. Okay, so through composting we get a product called as compost, and this compost is very useful as a manure. So compost is a good soil builder. Okay, so I hope you understood what is composting. It is a combined disposal of refuse and night soil. Okay, so it is a process of nature by which organic matter breaks down under bacterial action, forming a stable humus-like material called compost, which may be used as manure. Okay, so this compost is a good soil builder. Why? Because it contains small amounts of major plant nutrients such as nitrates and phosphates. So why is it a good soil builder? Why is it a good soil builder? Because it contains small quantities of plant nutrients such as nitrates and phosphates. Okay, so I hope you understood what is composting. So we have two types of composting. We have the Bangalore method and the mechanical composting. So let's discuss what is Bangalore method of composting. Okay, so the Bangalore method of composting is also known as anaerobic method or the hot fermentation process. So Bangalore method of composting is also called as anaerobic method or hot fermentation process. And what is this used for? It is used for disposal of town wastes and night soil. And how is it disposed? Trenches are dug 3 feet deep. Okay, trenches are dug 3 feet deep. So it's only 3 feet. Okay, not more than that. So it's only 3 feet deep. It is not recommended to go beyond 3 feet. Why? Because of slow decomposition. So if trenches are dug more deeper than this, then the decomposition process will slow down. Okay, and these pits, right, these trenches should be located not less than 800 meters from city limits. Okay, because this is the best method of disposal of wastes in towns. Okay, so this is good for town wastes and night soil disposal. So how is it done? Okay, so how is this composting procedure done? Let's see it. Let's discuss it. First, a layer of refuse about 15 centimeter thick is spread at the bottom of the trench. So we know that trenches are dug up first, right? And it should not go beyond 3 feet. Why? What will happen? Because the decomposition process may slow down. So first, a layer of refuse about 15 centimeter thick is spread at the bottom of the trench. So over this refuse, what are you going to add? night soil. Okay, night soil is added because we said what is composting? Composting is a combined disposal of refuse and night soil. We had already discussed about it, right? So over the refuse, what is added? Night soil is added to a thickness of 5 centimeters. Then alternate layers of refuse and night soil are added in the proportion of 15 centimeter and 5 centimeter respectively. So you keep doing this in alternate layers till the heap rises to 30 centimeters above the ground level. After that, what do? The top layer should be of refuse. Okay, so again you don't have to add night soil to it. Okay, don't add a layer of night soil. The top layer should be of what? Refuse layer. Okay, the top layer should be of refuse and not night soil, at least 25 centimeter in thickness. And then the heap is covered with excavated earth. So what happens within a week? Bacterial action takes place, heat is generated, okay, and the intense heat which may persist over 2 or 3 weeks will decompose the refuse and night soil and destroys all the pathogenic organisms. And at the end of 4 to 6 months, decomposition is complete, resulting in manure. So this was about Bangalore method of composting. I hope you understood what is Bangalore method of composting. It is also known as anaerobic method or hot fermentation process. Okay, and this is used for the disposal of town wastes and night soil. The next type of composting is mechanical composting. Earlier we discussed Bangalore method or anaerobic method or hot fermentation process. So now we'll discuss about mechanical composting. This mechanical composting is also known as aerobic method. Okay, so what is it? Compost is manufactured on a large scale by processing raw materials and turning out a finished product. So here the refuse is first cleared of salvageable materials such as rags, bones, metal, glass and items which are likely to interfere with the grinding operation. So here we are grinding all the refuse in this pulverizing equipment. Okay. So what do you have to do? You first have to segregate the salvageable materials like your bones, metal, glass and other items which may interfere with the grinding operation. Then you can put them into this pulverizing equipment in order to reduce the size of particles to less than 2 inches. Okay, so you're reducing the size of the particles to less than 2 inches. So what happens to the pulverized refuse? The pulverized refuse is mixed with sewage, sludge or night soil in a rotating machine and incubated. The factors controlled in the operation are certain carbon-nitrogen ratio, temperature, moisture pH and aeration. Okay, so in the pulverized machine, what happens? The pulverized refuse, finally what you get is pulverized refuse that is mixed with sewage, sludge or night soil in a rotating machine and incubated. Okay, and we discussed what are the factors controlled here in this operation: carbon-nitrogen ratio, temperature, moisture, pH and aeration. So the entire process of composting is completed in 4 to 6 weeks. So this was about mechanical composting, wherein a pulverizing equipment is being used. And here the pulverized refuse is mixed with night soil in a rotating machine and incubated. So the entire process of composting is completed in 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, so I hope you understood what is mechanical composting. Next, moving on to manure pits. Now this is very useful or effective in rural communities. Okay, because refuse may be thrown around the houses indiscriminately, resulting in gross pollution of the soil. So to avoid this, what can be done? Manure pits can be dug by individual householders. The garbage, cattle dung, straw and leaves should be dumped into the manure pits and covered with earth after each day's dumping. So once you dump it with refuse, you need to cover it with earth after each day's dumping. 2 such pits may be needed. When one is closed, the other will be used. Okay. So in 5 to 6 months, the refuse is converted into manure. So in 5 to 6 months, we can get manure which may be used in the fields. So this is very useful in or effective in rural communities. So this was about manure pits. Finally, the last method of waste disposal is burial. So this is very important in small camps. Very important Viva question. Okay, they'll ask you which method of waste disposal is followed in small camps. Then we say it is burial. Okay, burial. So what do you do here? A trench 1.5 meter wide and 2 meter deep is excavated, and at the end of each day the refuse is covered with 20 to 30 centimeters of earth. So once you dump it with refuse, you're going to cover it with earth. When the level in the trench is 40 centimeter from ground level, the trench is filled with earth and compacted, and a new trench is dug out. So when that pit is filled up, you close it and then you dig another new pit. Okay, so the contents may be taken out after 4 to 6 months and used on the fields. So burial is most suitable for small camps. Okay, so that finishes with the discussion on solid waste disposal. So finally, to summarize today's session, what did we learn today? We all learned to mention the hazards of solid waste accumulation, to list out the sources of refuse, to mention and discuss the types of solid waste disposal. We learned to explain composting. We learned to mention the method of waste disposal in small camps and hospitals. Okay, so the most expected questions from this chapter would be mention and discuss the types of solid waste disposal, and very commonly asked question in the university paper would be explain composting. So here you would have to explain the Bangalore method as well as the mechanical method of composting. Okay, and very important Viva question, as I said, to reiterate, what was it? Mention the method of waste disposal in small camps. So you need to reply it as burial. Mention the method of waste disposal in hospitals. You need to mention it as incineration. Okay, so I hope you understood the types of waste disposal. So to summarize, what were they? They were dumping, controlled tipping or sanitary landfill, and under that we discussed the trench method, ramp method and the area method. Then we discussed about incineration, composting, manure pits and finally burial. And I also told you what would be the expected questions in your university exams. So hope you had a good learning experience. Thank you.